Hello. Are you drowning in tax debt and feeling overwhelmed by the RS? Don't worry, you're not alone. In today's show, we're diving into the ultimate guide to tax debt resolution, revealing expert tips and strategies to help you tackle your tax troubles head on and regain financial peace of mind. Stay tuned because your road to tax relief starts right here with us.
Hello, everyone. Today we have Mrs. Morgan Anderson. She is a tax resolution expert. So, Miss Morgan, can you please introduce yourself and give us a little background?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. My name is Morgan Anderson, and I am licensed by the IRS as a tax expert. And my title is called an enrolled agent. And what that means is I have the equivalent of a CPA or an attorney when dealing with all matters of tax, and it's recognized by the states. But instead of being sanctioned by or ruled by a state and having to operate within those state lines, I get to operate my tax specialty nationwide.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, enrolled agents are a pretty unique type of individual in the tax world. So, tax nerds, that's who we are.
Well, that's good. And we're going to
Yes,
help some people today, yes, with all your
yes.
tax information and your expertise.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been doing this. September will be 25 years
Oh,
since
wow.
I began my journey focusing on nothing but tax debt resolution. So I've pretty much seen it all, been involved with solving it all, pushed some boundaries into uncharted territories within the
Hmm.
industry. And, the big inspiration for what I do and the reason why I get up every day and love doing this is because I get to help people.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, I help people who have the IRS or the state sending nasty letters or calling or knocking on doors or
Mm,
taking bank accounts, threatening to seize assets. And I'm able to step in and say, okay, let's bring that aggression level down.
hmm.
We're going to focus on a solution. Let's just start putting one foot in front of the other.
That's
Nice.
perfect, perfect.
Nice.
So we have a listener that's listening to you now, and they are in tax debt. They don't even know where to start. Why is it so important for people to pay that tax debt?
Okay, well, first things first is you don't want the IRS or the state to feel like you aren't paying attention because
Hmm.
when they start getting that idea, they
Hmm.
start really getting aggressive. They'll
Wow.
go after your wages, they'll go after your bank accounts, they'll go after your 401k, they'll go, if they're pushed
Wow.
far enough, they'll go after your physical assets like your home.
Wow.
So the other reason why you want to immediately start paying attention to it is because they start adding penalties and interest onto the top of the debt. So if you have a $50,000 debt owed for 1 year
Hmm.
and you don't pay attention to it and you ignore it, and ignore the notices, before you know it, they're going to add 25% in penalties on it, and you will be accruing interest every day that that debt is sitting there. And right now they're charging 8% per annum at the IRS. Some states are charging up to 10%. And that just keeps adding. So at the end of the year, whatever added up in penalties and interest, you're also getting charged interest on all of that.
Oh,
So
wow.
the debt snowballs and runs over you like a runaway freight train if you don't stand in front of it and say, okay, stop. I
Hmm.
got it. I'm going to start paying attention to this.
Wow. So, go ahead.
Yeah, so because one
Yeah.
thing that I really want people to understand is that I heard you say the IRS can take your wages,
Yeah.
they can take your
That's what
house.
I heard.
So
Yep.
can you just elaborate on that a little more, just to let them know when they get in debt with the IRS? I'm sorry, but that's a deal with the devil. You need to
It
pay them
is.
off.
It is. It is. And the states are even more aggressive. The
Hmm.
states tend to focus on tax debt quicker than the IRS, and they're more aggressive because if you think about it, the states have a smaller pool of people that they collect money from, right?
Hmm.
So they're a
Hmm.
little bit more efficient, but every dollar means more to the state than it does to the federal government. When you're at the federal government level, they're used to talking about billions of dollars,
Hmm.
right? The states, they're still at the millions level. So your
Mm-hmm.
$50,000 debt means more to your state than maybe a $100,000 debt means to the IRS. Don't get me wrong, they're all going to come after you at some point or another. At some point, your name's going to bubble up to the top of their collection list, right?
Ooh.
But it is when you deal, especially with some states like Illinois, New York, Pennsylvania, California with sales tax is pretty aggressive. Most states with sales tax are pretty aggressive. So if you're a small business owner, you want to stay on top of your sales tax as one of your number one priorities. Number two is then your payroll taxes, and number three is your income tax. If you're an individual, it's income tax, and just take care of it, stay in front of it. Get with your accountant, your trusted professional, and set up a checks and balance system. If you're self-employed and you have to make your estimated tax payments yourself, get with somebody to say, okay, how do I incorporate best practices to stay in front of this as much as I need to? Because I don't want to owe them a dime when I file my annual tax return.
Right, right.
Yeah, 'cause that could be kind of scary to owe the IRS money.
Yeah.
Trust me. I mean, that's for anybody though, right?
Yes.
So tell me something, Morgan. So you've been doing this for, you said, like almost 25 years, right?
Yes.
How did you end up in the tax resolution field or the business of tax resolution?
That's a great question. And I look back on it as a happy accident. I
Wow.
loved numbers. I loved law. I didn't necessarily like school.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to study science because I had no interest in it,
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of lost in my early 20s, and I ended up answering an ad for an administrative assistant for one of the industry leaders at the time. This is back
Mm-hmm.
in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and interviewed, and being naive, young lady from the Midwest, I had no idea that people didn't pay taxes.
Wow.
So I called my dad, who was a lieutenant colonel in the military, and I said,
Mm-hmm.
Dad, I had this interview. It sounded really interesting, but I don't know. Have you ever heard of people not paying their taxes? And I could hear him shaking his head on the phone all the way from Alabama to me in
Uh-huh.
Colorado. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, Daughter, you have so much to learn.
Oh.
It was a happy accident. So I took a chance. I signed on with the company, and I fell into this world where there wasn't a lot of training. You kind of had to figure things out. And if you worked hard, you learned how to get this done. And for
Mm-hmm.
the first 3 or 4 years of my career, I would work 7 days a week. I would go to work all day, go home, eat dinner, grab the dog, go back to the office, work until 9 o'clock at night, get up the next morning at 7 and do it all over again. I was in on the weekends, just trying to make sense of what these IRS notices meant, what
Mm-hmm.
the state could do and what they couldn't do at every level. And this was really before the internet was big and strong, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
None of these tax agencies had an online presence. So you really had to do a lot of legwork to put all the pieces together. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a different world now. The technology has grown by leaps and bounds, but it's still inefficient, of course,
Mm-hmm.
right? At the government levels.
Right.
But it was a happy accident, and I fell into something where I felt inspired every single day because I
Wonderful.
had clients that I really had a positive impact on their life, on their
Wonderful.
business, on their
Mm-hmm.
financial future, and
Mm-hmm.
that felt good when I could call
Mm-hmm.
somebody at the end of a case and say, "Guess what? We're done. Here's what our final terms are. Everything that you were losing sleep over before you hired me, I know I brought you peace of mind. You could sleep better. You knew if you just followed my lead, we'd get through it. But now you're really done." I've had grown men cry on the phone before because they were so overwhelmed with the depth of having this debt. And they didn't know what to do until they got us involved.
And you were
So,
able to help.
yes, ma'am.
So I'm like, you're about to make me cry because
I know.
the IRS is so bad. And when you get a grown man that's just so overwhelmed with their IRS debt, and then you come along as an angel and help them figure out a way to get some terms and to get from up under it, that really is almost enough to make you cry because, like you said, the IRS can do so much really to destroy your life if
Yes.
you don't pay.
Yeah, if you
Yes.
don't pay.
Right. And that's the
And
scary part.
Mm-hmm.
yes, but what I want people to understand is don't let your fear paralyze you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's where a lot of clients are when they come to me. They're just at a loss. They don't
Mm-hmm.
know even how to take the first step. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I wrote my book,
Right.
Tax Debt Rule Number One. There's always a solution because there is. And if you just start putting heat and light on it, and if you say, okay, I don't know what to do, I need some help, I promise you, you will get to a solution. The worst thing you can do is ignore it and kind of like an ostrich, bury your head
Right.
under the sand, right?
Uh-huh.
And just ignore it because let me tell you,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to bite you in the rear end faster than you can imagine.
A big bite.
Yes. Oh, yes. It's going to be painful. Painful.
Yes.
So don't sit back and just ignore. Best thing you can do is take a deep breath and take that first step. It feels so much better because you're going to start working towards that peace of mind of getting to the other side of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And based on the things that you've seen, can you tell the audience why most people end up with IRS debt?
Boy, as many different scenarios as you can think of. For
Wow.
individuals, a lot of it is just something unfortunate that they could foresee happens in their life. It could be
Mm-hmm.
an illness, it could be a death
Mm-hmm.
of a spouse, it could be, God forbid, loss of a child.
Mm-hmm.
With business owners, it could be a natural disaster, a tornado comes through town, and you may have insurance for business disruption. But when you're looking at, okay, business disruption insurance covers some things, but loss of talent because you can't go back to work, they go and find other positions. You
Right.
have loss of assets. Insurance will recover some of it or cover
Mm-hmm.
the cost of replacing some of it, but not all of
Mm-hmm.
it. Your
Mm-hmm.
client base, your client may have lost the entire shop that they operate from, so they're not going to hire you for 6 months. There's a lot that happens in businesses that you can't necessarily foresee. A
Mm-hmm.
competitor opens up down the road and slashes their cost to undermine you, right? You can, I've seen so many instances where it's family owned businesses and somebody is bringing money out of the business.
A family member, huh?
A
Wow.
lot of those cases. I've had
Mm.
professionals, doctors and dentists who said, well, my office manager was supposed to make sure that our tax deposits were being paid and she just wasn't doing it or he wasn't. There's a lot
Mm.
that can happen that can cause a tax debt to come about. The big thing to just always remember is there's always a solution. You just have to start working.
Okay.
Wow. You know what caught me when you said, really, if you don't follow up with your own taxes and what should be coming out, then you can wind up, and you relying on somebody else to do that for you. You can wind up being really stuck
Yes.
in this tax situation.
Yes, I've had so many business owners who said, well, but my office manager, well, my partner. I've had circumstances. We had one case, it was pretty egregious. And this gentleman had an in-house accountant for years. She had been with him for a really long time, and he'd had the business for over 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the last few years, she kept saying, well, we're behind. I need you to put some personal money into the business. Well, he trusted her and kept doing that. Well, she kept taking the tax money for herself, and she'd been working with him for a long time. So you would think it's somebody you could trust. The way he found out was the state issued a warrant to the business for unpaid sales tax.
Oh my.
He hired
Oh.
us. And she said, I'm so sorry. I just didn't have the heart to tell you. We're really upside down financially. I didn't want you to stress. I thought we could outrun it over time. And he said, well, that's fine. He hired us. We got involved and just something didn't feel right. And I said, okay, well, you hired us to handle this state sales tax issue. but how about the payroll taxes? And he said, well, I don't know. I'm going to give you power of attorney to look into them. On top of the $65,000 he owed in sales tax, there was over $3,000 in unpaid payroll taxes.
Oh.
And at that point with payroll tax, when you have a business and you have employees and you're taking taxes out of their paycheck, you hold them in trust as the business to then turn over to the IRS or state. They call that a trust tax. Same thing, sales tax. You collect it from the public, you hold it in trust to turn over to the state. And when that doesn't happen, they can pierce the corporate veil, hold anybody personally accountable for those taxes that were collected and not paid over. So when this situation came to light, she all of a sudden stopped showing up because she got an inkling what was coming up, called the police, she was arrested. It was really bad. Well, the IRS and the state tried holding him personally accountable, and we went in and said, no, he had no ill will. He had no intention. He had checks and balances in place, and she lied to him throughout all of this. She admitted to the state in the sales tax hearing that she did not tell him. And we were able to protect him from being personally held accountable for all of that debt.
So
I'm speechless.
I know. And I'm sorry, this is one of those tales that I've remembered over the years of somebody that I helped. But this goes to show you what happens in businesses. And he had checks and balances in place. He would meet with her every week. They'd go through the bills, they'd go through what she was paying, what was coming in. So this was just nefarious actions by one person in his organization. And it ended up causing the collapse of the business. We ended up having to close it. But you two keep looking at each other. I know
but it's amazing the
stuff.
things that you don't know when you're behind the scenes. So like we just have an account, but like in your line of business, you get to see the dirty and the ugly part of on the IRS. And so it's so many business owners who trust one person to manage their money that comes into the business. Like with him, I can imagine that's something that probably like nearly destroyed him emotionally.
It did.
To lose his business, that's a lot of money.
It did. When I had to call him and say the state sales tax is one issue, there's all these other problems, I was sick to my stomach over.
Oh,
I really was, because he was such a good man, carrying a pillar in the community, was involved with all of these nonprofit organizations, did a lot of work for them. It was so sad. There have been points with cases where I've lost some faith in humanity because of how ugly people and the poor decisions they make with reckless abandon for who they hurt.
Don't care.
This gentleman had that business for a long time, and he had to close it because she wrecked it financially due to her mismanagement of all things.
Right, that love of money and being greedy. But there's one thing I need her to touch on though, that people need to understand. When you said warrant, can you touch on a little bit to how bad it has to be before the IRS will issue a warrant?
Okay, so warrant is more at the state level.
Okay.
And it is equivalent to a tax lien. A lien, take for example, when you purchase a home and you have a mortgage, right? The mortgage company files a lien on the property to protect their interest in getting paid back. So you can't just sell the home and not pay the mortgage company. The lien is there to make sure it gets dealt with if you should ever liquidate the property. Same thing happens with the IRS and states. They file tax liens the same way. Now, it only gets recorded in the county that they last knew you operate in, or the counties you operate in, or where you live, or where you have property. It does not impact your consumer credit score. Yeah, I know. It's our friendlier credit codes, right?
Wow.
But it ended up being a disclosure issue with confidential tax information. And that's how the big three credit reporting bureaus said, no, we're no longer going to report this on consumer credit scores.
Wow.
Now, when you go to secure a loan more at the property level or get a business loan, those liens are going to throw up red flags all over the place. Same thing with business loans and tax liens related to business that will show up on the Dun and Bradstreet report and definitely sink a business's opportunity to buy big equipment or to secure a loan. But for the consumer level, it does not impact your consumer credit score. But
so
tax liens, tax warrants, some states call them tax warrants. It's the same thing. It's them filing a formal legal notice that you owe them money and it needs to be addressed at some.
Okay.
So sorry, long roundabout answer.
No, because a lot of us don't know the tax language. So
yes,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah, that was good. So my question is this, when clients come into the office and they come in for the first time, they're in distress, because I'm sure you're talking about the IRS and taxes and stuff. What are some of the first things they ask when they come into the office?
The number one question I hear is, will I go to jail? That's the number one. Everybody has this mental image of the IRS and the state, and just to take you on a little character walk, they picture somebody knocking on their door in an overcoat and a fedora with a gun and a badge saying, all right, give me your firstborn, right? The IRS and the states have done a great job of creating that image, that intimidating monster, right? So 9 times out of 10, the first question I hear is, am I going to go to jail? And I always say, especially if you're reaching out to me for help, you're not going to go to jail. Every year, only about 500 people go to jail over a tax debt. And right now, the IRS, as of 2020, the IRS estimated only 11 million people owed past due tax debt. Now, that's just on the federal side, and that was as of 2020. But that gives you an idea of the minute amount of people who owe tax debt that end up going to jail. And the IRS in the states are a little bit more common, but it still has to be a very egregious situation where they're reaching out to you and saying, hey, we've got this debt, we need to solve it. And you keep saying, no, I'm just going to ignore you. Then they escalate the aggression. They say, okay, well, you're not cooperating. So we're going to use all the third-party reporting, and we're going to find how you get paid and where you keep your money. And we're going to levy and garnish those sources as a way to try to get your attention to address the debt. And this is why when we started the conversation, you said, why is it so important that people pay attention when they have a debt and start addressing it? Because it just keeps escalating from there.
And you know what I think is important that just dropped in my mind, that we cannot have a tax conversation without discussing an audit. If someone gets an audit, does the IRS really come to your home? How does that process work?
That's a great question. Again, it's that fear that we've all had ingrained in us, right?
Yes.
So mostly audits are correspondence based. What happens is, especially in this technological age, right? Everything we do is recorded somehow, some way, unless all we deal with is cash. Every time you make a deposit in your bank account, there's a record of it, right? Every time you get paid, there's a record of it. So what happens is when somebody files their tax return, there is this third-party reporting program, and it takes the IRS about 2 years to address each year's filing. So we just went through filing season for 2023. It's going to take the computer system about 2 to 2.5 years to match what was submitted on the returns to what was reported by third parties associated with your social security number. And when there's a mismatch, they assign it to a person, and the person looks at it. And if it warrants further questions, you will get a notice in the mail saying, hey, we found a discrepancy. You reported your income at this level. Third parties reported that you earned $50,000 more. Can you send us some additional information? And that's how it starts. Most audits, unless we're talking big corporation, most audits start with a notice saying, hey, we found something and we want some more information. So don't be intimidated by it. We had a client who reached out to us. They had 3 children, and somehow their tax return only reported the social security numbers for 2 of the dependents, not 3. So they got a notice saying, hey, we saw you claim 3 dependents, but you only gave us info for 2. And it was very easy to address via written correspondence, and it was all taken care of, and they ended up owing nothing else.
Oh, good. Because when you see an audit of something in the mail, here it goes, panic attack. Oh my
I
gosh,
know.
are we going to jail?
That's the first thing you say.
I understand. When people see those initials, IRS, right, you feel like all of a sudden you're back in grade school and you're going to the principal's office over something, right?
Yes.
But the trick is, a lot of times there are errors in their system that may cause a question to come up. And as long as you address it, it's not that big of a deal. Now, if you're playing kind of dirty pool, right? You've got some fudged numbers and they start putting you under a microscope, they'll end up working it out with you at some point, right? As long as you cooperate. If you don't cooperate, that's when they get ugly.
Oh boy, that's the scary part. Now, what you want to add? I know you got some juicy.
Scary part, because I guess we have been down that road before where we got a notice in the mail from the IRS. So we know the feeling, like the actual,
your stomach drop,
it's like
your heart rate goes to
emotions that hit
150.
you, like, whoa,
like, oh my gosh, why are they writing us?
I know.
You panic because you already know the IRS. You don't want to be anything with them. You just want them to stay on their side of town and you stay on your side of town. It's true.
I agree.
You don't want to mess with IRS.
Yes.
What you gonna add?
No, I mean, that was to me. So I'm gonna go back, because what's on my mind still is the gentleman who had that business.
Yeah.
And because he put his trust in one person, it kind of wiped his whole business out. So based on that, if someone is starting a business, what kind of advice can you give them if you're first starting a business and you're brand new and you're just starting out? What's some advice you would give that new business owner?
Boy, that is a great question. The number one thing you can do is align yourself with an accountant that you feel comfortable with, that has experience, that has great referrals, testimonials to their services. You want to align yourself with an accountant that you can view as a probation officer, somebody who will be there to hold your hand, guide you through everything, and who you can call any day of the week and say, I have a question. Can you help me?
Okay.
You want them to see everything that you're doing, and you want to make sure they're licensed. There's accountants out there who have a lot of experience, but unless they are held to standards, it's the Circular 230 by the IRS. It's CPAs, enrolled agents. Some accountants have higher levels of education and licensing. You want to make sure that you have somebody has the credentials that allow the IRS or the states to be monitoring them. Because you'll hear it, as with any industry, there are some people every year who get their credentials taken away by the IRS for nefarious acts, right? They claim that you can save money. You don't have to pay taxes because Amendment 16 was never ratified by the government, and they're salesmen, and they'll con you into paying them for saying that you're not a citizen of the United States. Taxes never should have been charged against me. I've heard some bizarre schemes, but most anybody who has credentials, that have licenses tied to the profession, you're going to be able to do a little bit of research, find some good ones, meet with them one-on-one. It ought to not be anything they charge for. because they're trying to convince you, yes, you should use me. If
Mm-hmm.
anybody says, well, I charge you $150 an hour for consultation, say no, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's not somebody who's going to have an altruistic viewpoint
Mm-hmm.
regarding the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But find somebody that you feel comfortable with, who maybe, if you're going into, if you're wanting to open up a real estate office, have they dealt with realtors before? Do they know
Wow.
what standard deductions are that you should be claiming, right? Get somebody who's experienced in your industry, because now with the internet, you can have an accountant in another state. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Mm-hmm.
What more you should be focused on is their experience, their certifications, and who governs them and their actions. And do you feel comfortable? Are they somebody who is going to be willing to be that big brother, big sister for you as you start out on this
Mm-hmm.
venture?
Okay, and that's a good one. So leaning off of the business, now if we have a taxpayer that has debt, can
Mhm.
you let us know what their options are if they do have the debt?
Sure, sure. It depends on the level. It really does. There are cases where an individual is maybe on older Social
Mm-hmm.
Security. They had a spouse that passed and they ended up with some taxes surrounding their
Mm-hmm.
passing, and they didn't know. They may have limited assets, limited income moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on what they look like financially, the IRS and the state may say, you know what, you're uncollectible. We recognize it. There are
Oh.
some where you can call, and if you have a state debt, they allow you 24 months to pay it back under their program. Some are 36 months, some are 72 months.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me, it just depends on which state you're dealing with. With the IRS, same thing. They have various installment agreement programs. They
Mm-hmm.
have settlement programs. They have innocent spouse programs. Like,
Who
oh,
do they
yeah,
have all of that?
there's a lot. There's a lot. And not to shamelessly plug it, but to plug it,
Mm-hmm.
in my book, I go over all kinds of different options and give you some guidance on what you do qualify for based on your
Mm-hmm.
financial condition.
Mm-hmm.
There are some companies out there, everybody they say is an offer and compromise. Oh, sure, you're an offer and
Mm-hmm.
compromise. Pay us all this money and we'll get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all they are paper mills. They'll fill out paperwork. They have no experience behind it, and they'll send it in and say, okay, you owe us $6,000 for that, or whatever the case may be, knowing full well that the offer would never be considered because they make too much money. And that's where you just have to do your homework. You have to do your homework. But
Mm-hmm.
there's more programs than you can think of off the top of your head. I would say there's probably 25 different ways of addressing a tax debt.
Well, I hope what you just provided will give somebody some relief because
Yeah.
we are not experiencing taxes. So
Mm-mm.
we had no clue that there were that many options. So I'm hoping that the information that you just provided will be a blessing to someone that's listening.
Please,
But I have
hopefully.
like,
That's why
yeah,
I'm
it
here.
could be. Right. And
Yeah.
so, going back to the audit, because I have two juicy questions. The
Okay, good.
first
Give him.
one is when we talked about the audit, I didn't ask you, but how many years should people keep their income tax individuals? And you can also elaborate on the businesses too.
Sure, sure. To be safe on the personal side, I always say 7 years, right?
Wow.
So 7 years starting with, okay, it's 2023 was filed this year, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
want to keep 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18,
Mm-hmm.
17.
Mm-hmm.
So this year you could purge your records from 2016. Now,
Okay.
for a business, I recommend you 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's just to be on the safe side.
Mm-hmm.
With the scanners we have now and
Oh
the
yes.
cloud storage and the thumb drives and everything, you can keep all of your data scanned. And that way,
Mm-hmm.
I remember companies used to have storage sheds full of boxes of records,
Mm-hmm.
right? Depending on
Mm-hmm.
how
Mm.
big the company was.
Right.
Now it's all on data drives.
Okay. So
So
that
you,
that's very good.
That
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
What's the next
Oh, you
question?
want to hear my burning
Yeah, I
question?
do. I
With
do.
all this experience that you have, we have to discuss this.
Okay.
Okay. and I know you're familiar with it, but when
I'm
we look on
hoping.
the news, oh, I'm sure you are. When we look on the news or if you read an article, it looks like the millionaires, the multimillionaires, they don't have to pay taxes,
Oh,
but the little man has to pay taxes. Can you educate our audience a little bit on that? Because
sure.
it does seem that way. Like, why are these multimillionaires, why they don't have to pay taxes? But
Right,
why regular
right.
people do? Somebody
Well,
need to know that answer.
so here's the thing. Anything
Mm.
you hear in our media always comes from an invested point of view, right?
Okay.
Somebody's
Mm-hmm.
always the villain, or one side's the villain, or millionaires
Mm-hmm.
are the villains. There's always a villain. There's no more black and white truth
Mm-hmm.
to our
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
news. Social
Mm-hmm.
media, online, what you see on the nightly news. So everything has a shaded viewpoint when it's
Mm-hmm.
presented. So keep that in
Mm-hmm.
mind. But if you critically think through this, like let's say Donald Trump, okay, he
Mm-hmm.
has a team of accountants who leverage everything they do to minimize the personal income tax.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we have all heard that. Well, you don't pay taxes the same that we all do. And he says, no, I use the tax codes legally to minimize
Mhm.
my tax consequence.
Mm-hmm.
However, what they never tell you is with all of his organizations, businesses, when you have employees, businesses have to match the Medicare and Social Security, right?
Okay.
For
Mm-hmm.
every single, then they have to pay income tax depending upon how that entity is classified, right?
Cool.
So when you think about, okay, well, maybe the man doesn't pay that much in taxes and he
Mm-hmm.
looks like he makes millions, but he also
Mm-hmm.
donates a ton of money everywhere. But when you look at his organizations, they pay millions and millions
Mm-hmm.
of dollars in taxes that go into the kitty.
Mm-hmm.
But there's people in the media who want to make a villain out of that person. And you can say it about any celebrity, any politician, anybody, any business owner.
Mm-hmm.
You hear a lot of times, oh, those rich CFOs and CEOs of these big Fortune 500 companies. Well,
Mhm.
yeah, but they're also at the helm of these entities that pay millions and billions in tax
Oh.
dollars. So, yeah, they may leverage things so that their
Mm-hmm.
personal tax consequences minimal. But when you look at where all that money goes and what it goes
Uh-huh.
to benefit,
Mm-hmm.
nobody is this villain that the media and everybody
Right.
Mhm.
portrays. So
Okay.
just
Thank you.
critically think how taxes work, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I've learned is when you ask somebody, how much money do you make? They never tell you their gross income. They tell
Right.
you their net,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
if we actually thought about how much we pay in taxes and how much our employers pay in taxes, and how much then after we get that net paycheck, how
Mm-hmm.
much do we pay in tax on our cell phone bill every month, on the gas that we put into our car, at the grocery store, the dry
Yep.
cleaners? I mean, when you start
Right.
adding up the taxes
Mm-hmm.
that we pay,
Mm-hmm.
we are taxed out the wazoo, as I always say.
Right. Right.
And the media is very good at trying to make one person the villain, but really all of us are victims here of this
Right.
tax code. It's
Mm-hmm.
runaway. The number of volumes to contain the IRS tax code would
Mm-hmm.
fill the wall behind me.
Ooh.
There are so many loopholes in it and little rules that can bite
Mm-hmm.
you, bite me, bite you,
Mm-hmm.
bite the
Mm-hmm.
corporations. It's I really wish that the media would get away from tax as being the problem. It's more the governments and how they
Mm-hmm.
the practice of tax and
Mm-hmm.
what they do with all that money.
Right.
Mhm.
Right? I know.
Maybe
Not to
we
get
have
off
one day.
topic, but
No,
Mhm.
but it's true.
Mhm.
it's
It's true.
true.
Right.
I always, anybody who ever worked for me, I said, do yourself a favor and take 1 month, take next month and keep track of every bit of tax you get charged. The grocery store, the gas station, every time you run in to grab a bottle of water when you're on the road. Keep your
Taxes.
receipts, add up the taxes, look at your utilities, add up the taxes there, and it will inspire a fire in you to just, wow. I mean, it opens your eyes, because when you ask people how much money do you get paid, they'll always tell you the net. They don't think about the gross. And that's just one bit of taxation that we all deal with.
Just thinking about adding all that up just make my chest get tight. I'm
I
like,
know.
oh, I never thought about it that way.
I know, but few people do. So it's important. Sorry, I didn't mean to split our focus here with this,
fine.
but it is important that if we owe tax, think about what it goes to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Social Security, it goes to our elderly to help them pay every month for their housing and the utilities and their food. The roads, the schools, our military defense. That's what all of our tax money should be going to. And there's this whole other area of nefarious actions by our governments where the money goes elsewhere, right? And it shouldn't, because we're working hard to earn this money to then turn over portions, right? So just, sorry, again, I'm splitting the topic, but
no, it's important.
When you think about how our tax system is and what it was designed for, and then the way it gets used, it will inspire more people to start really pushing back on the local politicians and saying, wait a minute, I don't agree with how you're spending this money that you're collecting from us all over the place.
Right.
So I wish more and more people would pay attention and just speak up to their local people.
Right. And vote.
Yes. Vote.
Yes.
But really do homework about it, right? Like, don't just take what the nighttime news says or what your buddies on social media says, because when you look at how much money we're taxed, good Lord, it'll make you nauseous.
Just the thought of it make me my chest tight, because whoever thought about looking at the taxes that you pay on your utility bill
to add all that up to see how
I know.
No, we don't.
So now we're gonna look at it.
I know. I ordered some clothes online, right? A couple of weeks ago, and I was looking at the receipt, just kind of trying to track my order. What is this? A Colorado retail tax that I had to pay for buying stuff because I lived in Colorado and ordered it online. I'm sorry, what?
To get money.
On top of sales tax. That was just an added tax. So when you look at your utility bills and you start seeing it, when you register your vehicle, look at the list of taxes on that receipt, because it is ridiculous. And when you start thinking about how many people are in your area or how many people are in your state, and everybody else is paying the same dang thing, you're like, wow.
You're making a killing. Yeah. They are.
Yeah.
You want to add something else?
No.
I'm so sorry. This is a topic that I love. So
no, but someone else needs to hear it. That's why it came out.
It's all about benefiting the audience. So
yes. And then for the audience, we promised them a couple strategies and tips to give them peace of mind with their tax debt. So can you give 3 tips or 3 strategies that a taxpayer that may have debt owes, just to give them a peace of mind?
You bet. First things first, read the notices coming to you.
Okay.
Because the faster you act upon them, the less you're going to get charged in penalties and interest. Okay. If you call them, if you get one notice and it says you filed your tax return and you filed it late and we're charging you a penalty for that, maybe you didn't file it late. They just had an error in processing it. When you send in tax returns, if you mail them in, send them via certified delivery so you have a tracking number, because then when you get that erroneous notice for a late filing penalty, you can say, oh, wait a minute, I have proof it was delivered to you on time. Here's the proof. And they will automatically take that penalty off. The other reason you want to read the notices is because maybe it's just something like an audit notice, right? Hey, we noticed an anomaly. We need a little bit more information from you. Can you send these documents to us? You send it. They say, great, you're right. Not a problem. Case closed.
Perfect.
Right? And the other thing is your accountant is worth their weight in gold.
Wow.
Always meet with them throughout the year. Say, hey, I just want to touch base with you. I had a child. What do we need to do to prepare to claim them on the next year's tax return? I sold a house. I'm starting a business. Your accountant should be a lifelong partner of yours, right? Like a priest, a probation officer, confess everything to them, because that is how they're going to be able to guide you with the most efficiency and with the best advice they can give you. Now, you don't want a saint. I will tell you. This sounds bad. This sounds bad. But you don't want somebody who says, oh, well, we better add this up with their 10 key machine, right? But you don't want a sinner. You want somebody who says, okay, you're self-employed, you work from home, you operate out of one room in your house, correct? And that's the only thing you do there, correct? And you say, yes, okay, good. So let's get the measurements. We're going to take off all that percentage of your home for for your utilities, your insurance, your everything, any improvements you do on the house. We're going to take that percentage and write that off as a benefit for having your office and home. You want somebody who's going to say, let's get it all. Let's claim everything we legally possibly can fit into this box, because it's going to benefit you, because it lowers the income that you're taxed on. Now, like I said, you don't want a sinner. You don't want somebody who says, okay, every week when you go out to dinner with your family, send me that receipt. We're going to write it off. Right? You don't want somebody like that, but you want somebody who says, hey, if you're going to go out to lunch with your team, I want you to definitely talk business, because then we can say that was a legal business expense, right? Somebody who's going to guide you the right way.
Right, absolutely.
So that is a big thing. And if you do get notices from the IRS, if you do have a bill, or if you get notices from the state, don't hide from it. Take a deep breath, stand up tall, and say, okay, there's a solution. What is the solution? Let me figure it out. If you don't have a trusted professional, call me. I'm happy to say, hey, what area are you in? If you want to work with me, great. I'm happy to help people. We end up turning away more business than we bring on, because we'll have people call us and say, oh my gosh, I can't sleep at night. I don't know what to do. I owe the IRS all this money. And I say, okay, well, hold on. There's a solution. Let's talk about it. How much money do you owe? $5,000 on my 2023 tax return, and I don't know what to do. I say, first things first, don't hire anybody. I'm going to give you the phone number. I'm going to tell you what to say. You should not pay somebody to handle that debt. Now, if they say, I owe $50,000 and I haven't filed for the last 2 years on top of it, I'll say, okay, well, let's sit down and talk about how my office can help you with this. So, yeah, pick up my book. My book has so much information in it, so many stories. It's not sleep inducing, I promise. There's some comedy in it, and engaging stories and tales. And I try to write the way I present myself, very engaging, easy to follow, easy to understand. So that's always a good place to start. On our website, Golden Lion Tax Solutions, we have a blog history. Every week I write an article about something having to do with taxes. Go through that. Find a topic close to what you have a concern with. Read through my blog. And if you have questions, reach out to me. I'm happy to point you in directions of other professionals who may help. If it's a business owner and they say, oh my gosh, I haven't reconciled my bank statements in years, I don't even know where to start. I'm like, great, I've got a network of people I can connect you with. I'm happy to do so. We just want to help people. But you have to know there is a solution. You have to, as the taxpayer, take that first step and say, I need some help.
Well, I got a few questions, but this is pretty quick. I mean, first of all, if somebody, at what point should a taxpayer reach out to you and ask for help? At what point?
At any point. At any point.
Okay.
Yeah. At any point, because unless you have somebody who has the knowledge and experience to say, yes, you do need help, Or no, you don't. You've got this. Let me tell you how to handle it. If you don't have somebody that you can call and ask, do I need the help or do I not? You're going to be paralyzed and you're not going to take any action.
Okay.
Okay.
So I would
sense.
rather somebody who even has a $2,000 debt call me and say, how
Okay.
do I handle this?
Okay.
We
Perfect.
want, it doesn't always make sense to pay somebody to get involved. And we always err on the self-deprecating side as a business
Mhm.
owner to turn
Mhm.
people away and say, no, you can handle
Mhm.
it. Let me tell you exactly how to do
Mhm.
it. I
Mhm.
sleep very well at
Yeah.
night knowing that I have this ethical compass that I adhere to.
Right.
And my team adheres to the same, and they know the way I feel about things. So,
Mhm.
and, always doing right by the client or the
Wonderful.
non-client, right?
Absolutely.
That's
I
very
agree.
important, and that'll keep the clients coming. As long as you're
That's
doing what
right.
you're supposed to do, and you keep with that ethical compass,
Yes.
the doors will stay open
Yes.
because that's the
Yes,
right thing to do.
Yes.
that's what I have found. And
Mhm.
that's
Yes.
how I feel good at night. So,
Yeah, that's the
yeah.
right thing to do.
Good is great.
Yes.
So
Yes, it is.
one other question.
Okay.
So I know you're an author. Where can someone find your book if they're looking for it? Where is it located?
And the name of
In the
it, give
name
us
of
the website. We want them
Yes.
to be able to find you because that
Yes.
blog
Yes.
is important.
Yes.
So give us all
Yes.
your contact
All of
information.
that. All of that.
Yes. Okay. So my book is on Amazon. All you
Okay.
have to enter is tax debt rule number 1. If you can
Okay.
remember that, you can find my book.
Okay.
Okay.
So you can get it on there. If you go to our website, Golden Lion Tax Solutions, just think of a big gold lion standing there. It's really funny. We've named him Rex, and Rex walks across the screen when you go to our website. It's actually kind of my own thing. But if you think of a golden lion tax solutions, you're going to find our website. And at the top, there's all kinds of tabs for information about the different services we provide. But you can find our blog tab and go to that and there are 2 years of weekly blogs on there on various topics throughout the years. So
Wonderful. Okay.
Perfect.
yeah.
All right. Well, Ms. Morgan, we would like to thank you so much for giving us all of this information. I am sure that you have provided strategies that will give people a peace of mind, which was our goal today. So we want to thank
Wonderful.
you again for joining Bartelle's Money Talk, and we will
Yes.
see you next time.
And
Yes.
thank you so much. It was an honor. I'm sorry I tend to but
No, no.
I have so much information and knowledge and experience to share. And I just thank you both so much for having me as a guest. It was an honor.
Of course.
Yes,
Thank you
of
so
course.
much. And we will look forward to having you again the next time.
Yes, thank you.
I would love that. Anytime.
Okay.
Anytime.
All
Let me
right.
know. We'll do a part 2.
Yes, we will. Thank you
Thank you,
so
Morgan.
much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.